Hi, friends, and welcome to the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, creator of SLLN, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I may be an old dog, but I'm always trying to learn new tricks. And as a good friend likes to say, we're better together. So I hope this podcast will help school librarians connect and learn from each other. In this episode, Georgia school librarian Meggan Ford shares a lesson she created in collaboration with her school's Spanish teacher, a Dia de los Muertos and Banned Books Week mashup in which students build ofrendas, altars to show appreciation. It's a wonderful lesson that can be easily modified to work with different grade levels and potentially with a whole lot of subjects. Without further ado, let's get to the good stuff. Here's my conversation with Meggan Ford. I am so excited. I'm getting to talk with Meggan Ford today, and she has got such a cool lesson. Not only is the lesson itself cool, but the way she designed the actual presentation of the lesson itself, the materials, is so neat. So I'm really excited to talk to Meggan. Meggan, thank you for joining me today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Hey everyone, I am Meggan Ford. I am our president-elect for the Georgia Library Media Association. I work in a high school library just north in Metro Atlanta, Johns Creek High School. My actual job title is MEDI, which is Media Education and Technology Instructor, but I just call myself the Media Specialist.
Absolutely, yeah. I just go by school librarian. I've got like a 4-word title. Just keep it simple. Everybody knows what a school librarian is. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about how did you end up in school librarianship?
So I had taught in the classroom for 3 or 4 years, and the way a lot of pay schedules work for different schools is obviously the more degrees you get, the more money you make. And so I was looking at master's programs and didn't really want to go into kind of like the general, like, here's a bunch of educational jargon type of master's course. And I had a friend say, you're really, really passionate about books and you're really passionate about instructional technology. Why don't you go into school librarianship? And found that I just fell in love with it. It's like basically everything I loved about teaching. And all the things I do in my spare time kind of all rolled up into one.
I love that. That's very similar to what happened to me too. I was an English teacher for many, many years, and our school librarian was out for a little while, and he asked me to fill in whenever I could during my free periods. And he said, like, oh, I'm thinking in the next couple of years I might retire, but you'd be really good for this position. I was like,
Great.
Hadn't thought about that before, but that's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
I completely agree too. It's just the best parts of teaching all rolled up into one.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So you're going to tell us a little bit about this awesome lesson. So what is sort of the backstory of this lesson? Where did this come from?
So I have a friend who is a Spanish teacher at our school. We've kind of become friends over the past 2 or 3 years, and she is always down for trying something new, which, those are my favorite teachers. She was actually in the library just kind of taking a break with her kids, and we were saying that our freedom to read is dead. And it had been, we were kind of rolling into October, and I said, hey, you guys usually do the Day of the Dead altars, right? And she was like, yeah. I was like, how about we mix it up this year and do it with banned books? She was like, this actually sounds very fun. And so she was totally down. She sent me a rubric that she wanted. I designed the portion of the banned books and then kind of what the altars were going to look like. And then she filled in with pieces she wanted to do with the Spanish portion for her class because she wanted to make sure it included the language as well.
Sure. No, I love that. And what a great chance to collaborate. It shows what an important space the school library is for that kind of thing, because just hanging out, spending time in the space, and you're thinking and talking, and all of a sudden ideas start to click together. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, that's, I think we talk a lot about, building relationships and collaboration. But I find that our best collaborations are, like you said, you're sitting there talking with the teacher and you go, wait a second, this is what you're doing in your class? Why don't we do this thing?
So you had this idea. I love it. And had you done any kind of banned books activities in previous times?
Yes, so we always do different banned books makerspace activities in the library, generally for Banned Book Week. The past 2 years, we've partnered with one of our local bookstores to do a banned book fair because our
Nice.
yeah, high schools don't get to have the Scholastic Book Fair, which is so sad. And so I brought the book fair to my kids. So we had done a few banned books things, and then we made buttons this year for the school. So this was just a fun way to incorporate Hispanic Heritage Month with banned books.
I love it, man. Tying together so many great things. And one of the things I love about this lesson too is you're working with high school students, but I can absolutely see this sort of being modified to work with all sorts of grade levels.
Yeah, it really would work with almost any grade level. I think you could do it with third graders, and we did ours with both sophomores and juniors who were equally excited about it. It could definitely be leveled for almost any classroom.
I love it. So, can you walk us through a little bit of how the lesson sort of unfolds? Like, what is the sort of the main idea that the student's supposed to walk away with, and then how do you kind of get them there?
Right. So we started by just finding some resources for the kids on, pardon my Spanish, it is not great, ofrenda, which are the actual altars that are made during Dia de los Muertos. And so we watched a video that kind of showed the kids these are the pieces that go into these altars. This is why they're so important. This is how we represent people who have passed on. And then we also offered them some different resources and articles on how they're built and created. So we definitely wanted to represent the heritage piece there. We wanted them to be culturally authentic. And then we moved into discussing banned books and why it's so important to stop censorship. And then we gave the kids lists of the books. So from there, we asked them to put those two ideas together to design the altars. So they needed to be, like I said, culturally authentic, and then they also had to represent the book in an authentic way. Our high schoolers, this is where we kind of got lucky. Our high schoolers read a lot of these books in their classes. They're part of the curriculum, especially a lot of the classics. And so they were familiar with several. And then others, it was funny because there were things like Diary of a Wimpy Kid and Captain
Hmm.
Underpants that, of course, my high schoolers were like, I loved this book. Why is this banned? So it was great for really starting those conversations with them as to why we need to stop censorship, why we need to stop banning books, and how silly a lot of these bans are. And then it's a great way in their world language class to be able to use what they've learned in Spanish to represent themselves as well and express themselves. So we kind of got two pieces there mixed in. So they're actually creating the second day of this, they're actually creating the Spanish portion of this where they're going to use expressions and explain how these altars tie in with the theme and symbolism of the book.
Man, I love that. There's so many great intersections of all these different classes. Like you've got just a great cross-curricular ability here with this lesson. I can totally
Right.
see this spilling into the ELA classes and being like, we're reading these books, but well, let's have a discussion about how does that fit in and the symbolism, representate. Like there's just so many. Oh boy, I love it so much. It's so good.
You get into several different classes. If you wanted to merge this, with like science, you could do scientists who have passed on. If you wanted to merge it with social studies, famous historical figures, like there's so many different ways this could be altered to be really great. Like you said, it
No pun
just
intended, right? They can be altered. No, that's so great. I hadn't been thinking about it in that direction, but that's also a great idea too, is taking this and taking it out of Spanish and using it in another way, or connecting it to Spanish, connecting these other lessons to Spanish, these other subjects to Spanish, which we don't often think about.
No, no. And I think we really have the opportunity in schools where we have all these world language is to celebrate diversity in different ways, which, so our school has 72 different countries represented.
Wow.
Yeah. So we really, really try to focus on learning about different cultures for sure, because it's that empathy piece of learning where someone's from and what their culture is.
Yeah. And I mean, now I'm thinking it through, and you could even sort of expand it out and say, like, okay, so we're talking about science people that we can represent with these, but like, what are the traditions of that scientific person's heritage that might, like, if we're talking about someone who's from one of the European countries, like, what do they do? That could be a really neat. And you've got that great opportunity at the beginning, if you wanted, to bring in all sorts of research skills. And
Yeah.
oh boy, there's just so many ways this can be branched out and touch on so many great subjects. I love it.
Yeah, you could definitely adapt it so many different ways.
It's great. So you've done this lesson with the students, yes?
Yes. So we started Friday, so yesterday. And then had planned for 2 days originally. I think it could be done in 2 days. We are deciding to give the students a third day as well. Just because it seems like they are being extra creative and really detail oriented. So we wanted to give them the opportunity to run with that. So
I love that. Giving the kids that agency and saying your participation in this matters, so we're going to give you the time.
right, right. Yep.
And have you sort of, I know you've only been through one day of potentially 3 days. Is there any particular ways that you're sort of directing them, or that they're sort of, that you're assisting them as they go along?
So we have both been in, again, high school. So I would say they need a lot less assistance than some of the younger ones. But we've been kind of helping as we walk around and see what kids are building, and just kind of saying, have you thought about designing it this way? Or, hey, I see you're having difficulty making a paper flower. Can I show you how to make a paper flower? So a lot of it is just learning those hands-on skills that some of them don't have, and just helping with that and monitoring with that. We really just set out a lot of craft supplies that I had already had in the library and let them run with it. We did end up, this is somewhere where you might ask them ahead of time what they're looking for. So I had to do an Amazon Prime order this weekend because some kids wanted like bigger buttons, or I had these craft pom-poms and they were gone by, period 3, and we needed 1,000 more or whatever. And I was like, well, Amazon Prime is here for that reason. So
I love that. I love too that you're letting them kind of run with it, but you're also able to provide them with really the one-on-one instruction that they need, which allows for so much differentiation if it's needed.
yes, yes. And we told them, one thing we found was to tell them to start by picking the book, because that kind of led them into what we used shoeboxes, what their shoebox altar was going to look like. It was very difficult for them to just start decorating and not really have a theme.
Oh, yeah. No, that totally makes sense. You got to start with your symbolism before you can get your symbols in place.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And making sure that you are walking around and asking them what certain things mean. So that they're thinking about it too. So they're not just randomly finding silver tissue paper. Why is your box in silver tissue paper? And just kind of making them think through that.
Right. Encouraging that reflection even on the go. That's great.
Right.
Huh. Now, this is the first time you're doing this lesson, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So there may be lessons to be learned from having done it the first time, but we're still kind of in process.
For sure.
Yeah. But I mean, I love it. I love just diving into something and seeing what happens and being like, okay, half of that worked right, and the other half we're going to have to refigure, but that's okay.
Yeah, but that's always part of doing something like this is going in and saying, okay, well, this may fail epically, but let's see what happens.
Absolutely. No, definitely. So it seems like the kids, I mean, you already said that they're really engaged with what they're
Yes.
doing. So it seems like the feedback from them is pretty positive.
Hmm.
How have you had a chance to talk? And again, I know you're in the middle of doing it for the first time, so there hasn't been a chance yet. But have you and your Spanish teacher had a chance to sort of talk about how it's going?
We talked about it at the end of the day a little bit. We said our sign that it was going really well is so our bell rings at 3:30 and at 3:25 we couldn't get them to stop working and start putting materials away. We were like, you guys have to go home. Uh, our other sign and indication, especially in high school when something like this works really well, is that there aren't a lot of phones out and scrolling going on. And
Nice.
what is happening is like it was directly related to like book research. And we were like, okay, they're definitely engaged in this. And that's a good sign for
Oh
us.
wow, that's outstanding. That's such a good feeling when the kids you
Yes.
can't pull them away from the lesson. Wow.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I love that. So, if you had any advice for folks who were looking at this lesson and thinking they wanted to dive into it, what would you suggest that they can do to kind of be prepared?
I would say that we started with some big discussions between the two of us on what we wanted to see and what should be on the rubric. So start with that end goal in mind. What do you want
Hmm.
it to look like? And why are you doing it?
Almost
Uh,
like a reverse engineering it from, yeah, that totally makes sense.
right. And then for us, after that, it was because she had done the shoe boxes before, just kind of discussing, what supplies we needed the day of so that we had everything for every child because we want to be equitable.
Hmm.
And so for the kids were responsible for bringing in shoe boxes, but like, of course, we both, as a teacher, you're always prepared for the kid that doesn't bring in the shoebox.
Hmm.
So we had a lot of extra, and I'm sure every librarian can attest to this. We have so many boxes hanging around. So we were able to let the kids use whatever cardboard we had, whatever boxes we had. And it was actually very interesting because some kids with shoe boxes chose to use the extra cardboard. For books like drama, they actually used the cardboard to build a stage.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
So just kind of using that extra cardboard is creativity, which I would not have guessed, but just
Yeah.
making sure that you have everything there that they need. And like I said, I was not prepared for how many supplies they were going to use. So
Uh
definitely,
huh.
I think I shouted at one point, okay, everybody, I'm on my Amazon app. What do you need? And the kids like shouting supplies at me. And I was like, okay, it's coming on Sunday. It'll be here.
So, however many pom poms you have, you need more. That's the
Right.
lesson to
So
take away here.
you're gonna need way more tissue paper than you think. Especially red, which we had not guessed. Red and black, those were the most popular colors of tissue paper. The thing we did not also expect is the number of kids using popsicle sticks.
Huh.
Yeah, they were using them to make people and cutting them in half to make lanterns.
Oh.
And then another trick that I would not have thought of are those clothespins that have the little round head on them, like an old school clothespin. They were also
Hmm.
using those for people. So
Oh, very
have a lot
clever.
of those as well.
Hmm. Now I'm seeing this turning into an art collaboration too, bringing the
Yeah,
art teachers.
absolutely.
Man, well, I love it. And I love the way you put the document that you're sharing this with together too. Did you
Thanks.
use Adobe Express for that? Is that?
Yes, I did use Adobe Express. If you haven't gotten a chance to play with it recently, I highly suggest it. So they've just probably, I don't know, a month ago moved out of beta. I really like the way they set up their web page document, which is basically a scrolling page where you can link resources and text within that.
Hmm.
So we were able to put all of our resources on one page, which for me as a teacher is always really hard when you've got a bunch of links you want to put in there. And then we were also able to link in the project directions as well. You could put in text to explain different things. And then I like that it makes it pretty. I always am a fan of pretty.
Yeah. Pretty is nice. Pretty is good when you can get it
Yeah,
to happen.
right.
It's
Exactly.
almost like a hyperdoc that you've made.
Yes, yes. You can definitely use their web pages for hyperdocs, which is great. Uh,
Yeah.
super easy to link all those resources all in one place instead of having them all over.
Oh, yeah.
Just throwing them into a Word doc, which just looks messy and is kind of confusing. So I think it made it really easy for the kids to access things as well.
Nice. So functional and nice form. Form and function married.
Yes. And I would say that Adobe Express, if you are like nervous about techie things, it's super easy to use, which is great. And now they've got generative AI images in there as well.
Hmm.
So whatever's in your brain can come out on paper.
Nice. I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. All right. So we're going to now have a book break. So I am excited to talk about just any book that you want. Like, what's a book that has either grabbed you or your students, or one that you read that you can't wait to give to students, or one that you read that you want to give to your friends? Any book that just kind of grabbed you.
Oh my gosh, I'm such a book nerd. So I finally started Fourth Wing, much to my friends' sadness because they've been begging me for months. Actually, one librarian just randomly sent it to me in the mail. Like, you
Nice.
need to read this. You haven't yet. I do actually suggest it for both males and females. It was different than what I thought it was going to be. It's Divergent with dragons.
Okay. Okay.
So that has kind of caught my attention. I've been sucked into it. But if you're looking for something spooky, because we are in October,
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend How to Sell a Haunted House. I am into it's Grady Hendrix, and I'm super into weird books. This was a weird one.
Okay. I like a
It,
weird book.
right? It starts with a brother and sister that are their parents have passed away, and they have their parents' house, and their mother was a fan of creating puppets, and that's like her life's work, which you're already like, yeah, no, I'm out.
Yeah.
And so it starts as family drama where her brother is like, no, we're not going into the house. We are demolishing the house. Someone's just going to come out and clean it. And of course, the sister's like, no, we have to go through our parents' things. And the puppets start moving on their own.
Oh,
And
no, no, no,
like,
no.
yeah, okay.
Oh,
Maybe
boy.
don't go into the house.
Yeah, seriously. Oh, boy. That definitely sounds like a good creepy one. I love
Yeah,
it.
it was excellent.
Are those both? I know Fourth Wing is YA. I
The,
have already forgotten the
how to,
title.
okay, How to Sell a Haunted House is listed as an adult book.
Okay.
It's creepy enough that I probably wouldn't give it to like a middle schooler,
Sure.
but there was not like a ton in it that would be inappropriate for maybe like an older teen. We talk about like new adult. I
Yeah.
would say it's definitely in that new adult range. Like I
Okay.
have handed it to some of our kids that are really interested in scary books
Okay.
and enjoyed it too. Mhm.
Love it. Awesome.
Yep.
All right. Well, I have been so excited to hear from you, Meggan. Thank you so much for coming and sharing not only your awesome idea for a lesson, but some great book recommendations. I love it. If folks want to connect with you, where are they going to go to find you? Any social media that you're on? Website?
Yes. So I have social media on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can follow me at Ms. MS Ford, Ford, Fierce. I just started a website to start documenting my things, and it's seeds-of-imagination.com. So you can find me there as well.
Nice. I love it. All right. I'm going to make sure those go into the show notes so people can click and
Perfect.
find you.
Perfect.
And again, thanks so much. I'm so glad you could be here.
Yeah. And I hope to connect at AASO.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Meggan, for taking the time to share this great lesson, and thank you, listeners, for tuning into the podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes, which include not only Meggan's resource document, but also links to the SLLN website, home to a curated list of free upcoming virtual events and resources for school librarians. It's easy to become a member of the network. Just visit the site and use what you like. If you have an idea, a question, or a lesson you want to share, you can email schoolliblearning@gmail.com. That's schoolliblearning@gmail.com. Know someone with a great school library lesson? Let us know. Until next time, be safe, be well, and be good.